In this lesson, we will talk about tRPC and start implementing it, beginning with the backend. What is tRPC? tRPC is a library that allows us to simplify communication between the backend and frontend by synchronizing types on both sides. Specifically, what the backend sends to the front, and the types of input parameters that are sent from the front to the backend when we make these requests. Actually, tRPC is framework independent, so to speak. It doesn't matter whether we use React on the front or Express on the backend. The main thing is that it synchronizes types between the front and backend. The advantage of this synchronization will become clear as you go through this tutorial, because we will write many endpoints in tRPC and witness all its beauty. But for now, we just need to connect it. Let's start by connecting tRPC on the backend. First, we need to install it. Go to the backend and install tRPC on the server. Next, I suggest creating a new file. Let's call it trpc.es. And everything related to tRPC will be placed in it. Let's begin. First, we need to import it. Minute trpc from dog.trpc.server. Great. Good. Next, you need to initialize it. Minute trpc server. Excellent. And now you need to create its router. trpc.router.mln.trpc. How to write it all and so on is, of course, in the documentation. And what one can understand is that all these initial settings of your architecture are defined only at the beginning of the project. Essentially, this is its most complex part, the longest part, but in the process of creating the actual product features, you will hardly return to it. Moreover, when you start a new project, you will simply copy previous developments from the old one. And no matter how complex and lengthy all the initial project settings are, this is your capital, which will ultimately work for you. If something is unclear to you during the setup process, this architecture will gradually become clearer to you as you write these new features. And also when you have to change some settings in it, you will understand it more deeply. Again, my approach is such that the practice comes first, and if something is still unclear, it will become clear later. And you can always look into the documentation, watch YouTube videos, which I will also link if you want to understand in more detail what is happening here. Okay? Router? Well, the router accepts an object where we need to list these routers. Previously, we had a regular router, yes, /IDS. This part is clear. How do we declare a router in tRPC? In tRPC, we don't need to think about the endpoint address. We need to treat the endpoint on the backend as some functions that we will call from the front end. Accordingly, we will call this function getIDS. It will sound so logical. And now, we need to declare this router, tRPC. tRPC. Everything is a procedure. And essentially, there are two types of procedures. Query. It means we just request something from the server, and mutation. It means we want to send something to the server that will change the server state. So, there will be some changes made in the database, etc. And if you look at it broadly, query requests are GET requests, and mutation requests are POST requests. But we will get to mutation later. For now, we usually have GET requests. Essentially, we're trying to do the same as here, but with tRPC. So, query. And in query, we pass the function that should be called when we request it from the front end. This function should return ideas for us. Let's take them from here. They are no longer needed here. Let them be here. Here is our endpoint. But look, we've declared it all here. And for now, all these tRPCs are not related to our server. We need to connect it to our server. For this, we export the tRPC router and apply it here. How to apply it here? This will not be needed now. Our old one. Yes. Let's delete it immediately. So, we connect it to our Express setup. Express app, use. When we say use, it means that, well, here we had get, meaning all GET requests to this address will be processed by this function. When we say use, it means that all types of requests, including post, get, put, delete, etc., will be processed here. We pass to the address of tRPC, and then we need to pass the tRPC router itself. For this, tRPC has a convenient feature, tRPC Express, from tRPC server. Adapters Express, so, and the third Express, middleware, and here you need to pass the router itself. Router, tRPC, router. Okay, good. In theory, it should already work. Let's take a look. The backend didn't break. Let's pick up a little of what happened here. All requests related to RPC we pass to our router. Here we have combined functions. But what do our endpoints actually look like? Let's take a look at it. Here's our IDS we removed, so it's not there. If we write RPC, somewhere IDS, we will get this structure. Let's take a look at it. You see, it has become a bit more complex. So now there's result, data, IDS. Although in reality, we were returning, it seems, just an object that has an IDS field. So this entry means the same as this one, just a shortened version. All these environments in the format of data and result are needed for RPC. So it's more convenient to work with them later on because there can be both data and errors and some additional information. All this will be handled by RPC itself under the hood. Again, the route address itself is not important to us. We just looked at it. And in the future, we will not return to this. On the front end, there are handy utilities for React that allow you to work with all these endpoints. And on the front end, it will look as if we are really calling a function named something like IDS on the back end. But we'll deal with the front end and RPC in the next lesson. So what's here? Let's add just one single line in preparation for the next lesson. Export type tRPC router. The type of the tRPC router itself. We don't need this type on the back end, but on the front end, we'll use it to synchronize our types. Let's move on to the next lesson and add tRPC to the front end.